Hello and welcome to Start the Beat with Sikes. My name is Sikes and this is my podcast. Before we get started, I just wanted to take a quick moment to thank everyone who checked out last week's episode. If you're one of the people who listened to that conversation, I hope you enjoyed it and thanks so much for coming back. But for those of you out there who are new to the show, welcome. Please feel free to make yourselves at home. And as always, there's beer and soda in the fridge. So, what's going on? Happy Monday, everyone. Hope you're all doing well. I want to thank you all for being here, genuinely. And while I have you here, why don't we take a moment to tell you to do one thing for your boy. Subscribe, rate, review, like, follow, share, do all that stuff. It supposedly helps, and I need help, obviously. So help your boy out. Let us know what you think about the show. If you got any ideas for guests, if you got any ideas for topics, we're always taking suggestions and opinions and blah, 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 blah. It all makes the show better. Your contributions are always very welcome. So if you got an idea, something in your headspace, get it out there. Let me know about it. That would be tight. Got some shows coming up. Gonna plug my stuff a little bit before we get into the episode. Yeah, I'm excited. I got a lot of stuff happening. I'm on another planet right now. Anyways, so this Thursday coming up, April 11th, Sikes and the New Violence is going to be at Full Pint Wildside Pub. April 12th, the day after that, is podcast night at the Tolma 2. Peanut in the building. That is a live podcast event with Start the Beat, Thrifty, and Neon Brainiacs. April 13th, Grey Walker, my metal band, is going to be out in Youngstown, Ohio, back at Cedars. Stoked for that. That place is fucking awesome. Next week, April 19th, Brillo Box, MySpace Night. I'll be DJing, Wyatt'll be DJing, and our homie Bambi will be in the house hosting the whole fucking thing. That's going to be a blast. April 25th, also at Brillo Box, is the Start the Beat 5-year anniversary party, which if you haven't heard about this already, I'm celebrating 5 years of this bullshit at Brillo Box with a panel of guests that will include, stumbling over my words. The panel will include Icky Vicky, Ashley Courts of Black Forge Coffee House, Clara Kent, Bambi again, and Connor Murray of Crafted Sounds. So that's a really cool panel. It's going to be like a local music scene meetup as well, kind of like a social thing. So come on out. I'm trying to get everybody that's ever been on the show there so we could all hang out and stuff. I don't think that's going to happen because that's a lot of people. I don't even think you could fit as many people that have been on the show in Brillo Box. But that's kind of cool. 5 years of doing this. So hope to see as many of you there as possible. And let's move it right along. Let's keep this motherfucker chugging into listener questions. All right, so this week got one call-in question. Let's give it a whirl.
Hey Brian, it's Kev. I'm sending this to you as a voice message because it's way easier to send this than type it out.
Yeah.
So I just saw Cat Scams, The Real C, and Native Alloys this weekend at the Brillo Box, which was a great show. Native Alloys were awesome. The Real C was really, really good. It was their first gig. But you have to talk about this on your show. Dude, people were talking so fucking loud throughout that gig. I had to place myself right in front of the amps without any earbuds in order to hear the band. Like, one of the members of The Real C actually kind of made a gesture to the audience to, like, quiet down. I don't understand what people are doing talking through a band set. It's so disrespectful. I don't know. I'm not saying you have to approach it with the reverence of a monk and be completely silent, but crowds got to understand that some of these bands are up there trying to work something out. And I get it. You're out, you're seeing your friends, you're excited to catch up. But if you're going to talk that loud, go all the way back by the bar or go downstairs. Don't fucking talk through a band set. Anyway, that's my spiel. Back to my route.
All right. So we got Kevin worked up about people talking during people's sets. It shows. There's a little glitched out happening there. I don't know what that was all about. It's the first time I ever tried playing a listener question on the show. So it's glitching out. We'll figure that out. Technical difficulties, not a big deal. Shit happens. Anyways, people talking during shows. This happened to me before once too. It wasn't at a local show. I was seeing Feist at Stage AE, And I swear it seemed like 75% of the people that were there were just like some dumb motherfuckers that won tickets off some radio thing or something that couldn't care less about being there, just talking, having the fucking time of their lives while Feist is trying to do her beautiful, light, indie folk rock, you know? But I mean, like, again, an outdoor music venue is probably not the best fucking thing for, you know, that type of music anyways, but without me getting too sidetracked, I totally agree with you. You know, talking during sets really, really sucks, especially if it's, you know, very obvious that you're dealing with a group of people that are just there that could easily move their conversation to, you know, another part of the room or another part of the building or another part of the fucking planet, depending on, you know, how much you don't want them around you. But at the same time, I don't know. I guess it's a free country. And if for some reason they felt like coming out to a show to not enjoy the show, I don't know. I don't know what you tell these people. I think that, you know, a lot of the time it really falls on the performer to decide how they feel about it. I think, you know, if the performer decides they want to stop the song or make a gesture in between songs or something and make a comment on it, you know, then that's probably the best way to go about it. I don't know, man. I was actually going to just try to re-record my entire response to your question, but this fucking computer McFreezy dick shit back here is just fucking doing whatever it wants to do. So fuck it. We're just going to roll with it as is. I'm a little on edge today. I don't know why. I'm just feeling a little juiced up. Open up a water. Fucking freaking out today. Anyways, that's going to be it for listener questions. I'm not doing any of the other cutesy intro stuff I normally do. Let's just get into this fucking episode, all right? How's that sound? Yeah, it's a good one. This week on the show, I got my friend D, aka Bruiser Beep. For those of you that aren't familiar with Bruiser Beep, this is some outside the box stuff. This might be a little bit much for some of you, and some other of you, this might be right up your fucking alley. So what we're gonna do before we get into this conversation is I'm actually gonna play you a little clip of a Bruiser Beep performance off of YouTube right here, right now, just like a minute or two of it, just so you can get a kind of a vibe of what you're going to be getting into here with my conversation. And then we'll transition from that clip into my conversation with D, aka Bruiser Beep. Cool? Cool. Here's that clip. That was a little live clip of Bruiser Beep. And Now it is time. The moment you've all been waiting for. Here we go. Here it is. Yeah. My conversation with D, aka Bruiser Beep. Sit back, relax, and let's start the motherfucking beat. Everything's good to go. And D, hello.
Hello.
Welcome to the show.
Thanks.
Happy Sunday. How are you?
It's been great. A great Sunday so far. I had a lot of trouble getting here, but it's a beautiful Sunday, so it was a good adventure.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with having an adventure.
Yeah.
So before we turned everything on, we were just chatting about your various aliases and mystery around your name. And for those of you that aren't familiar with you, you do music or performance art, or we can get into like whatever you want to consider it, because it's
more confusion about that as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of confusion around, like your name, and you do perform under the name Bruiser Beep. Mm-hmm. So what the flapjacks is that all about?
Well, I've had various solo music projects. I've never had really a band. I've tried to jam with different people, but I've just always been more compelled to do solo work. And what I've had going on under Bruiser Beep as the moniker has been a thing for about a year and a half now. Yeah. And that name kind of just came together really quickly. I was writing the songs before I picked the name, and I feel like I kind of picked it in a rush, but it just kind of, there's a lot of beeps and bleeps, and then I bruise really easily. So that was kind of how I decided to pick that name. Like I said, I picked it in a rush. If I would have put more thought into it about what I wanted it to be, but also I didn't know that when I started it exactly what I wanted it to be, and I'm fine with that. I may have picked a different name. As far as I've experimented with different performance monikers. I tried to do a thing where I wanted to make it confusing on purpose, but people's reactions was that they were confused, and I don't know why I expected different, but I guess I fluctuated between liking that and not liking that, and I also do that with my just name that people would address me by, and I like that too, and other times I don't. I feel as I fluctuate between it, I gravitate more towards liking the confusion that it creates between who am I and what I do and what it's called. And I don't think that sort of obscurity with names is super a thing that's going on in Pittsburgh, at least right now. And I like it for that reason.
Sure. I would be curious, just from like a personal standpoint, how that may relate to, I don't want to impose anything, but I feel like most artists come from kind of like an introverted background. And I wonder how much of that has to do with maybe still that introverted mindset and maybe not wanting to be too connected with the outside world, but simultaneously being this very extroverted person in terms of performing, which you are.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And again, that's fluctuated my whole life between being more extroverted and going through a phase of that being sort of the prominent way I'm expressing my everyday life and performance, and also times when I'm being more introverted. And I think, and as I said, I picked the name Bruiser Beep, which has definitely been,
it's a cool name.
Yeah, I did like it. Sometimes I feel like it doesn't. As I said, I picked it in a rush, and I feel like it doesn't always say what I want it to as far as the name goes. Sure. But again, I didn't know what I wanted the project to be at the time. I was just writing these songs, and I still sometimes don't know what I want it to be. I have a lot of different ideas, and so the fact that it can change, I'm totally fine with that.
There's something about the word beep that's kind of like whimsical.
Yeah.
And there's something about your performance as well that at times can be whimsical, but I don't know if that's always exactly what you're trying to put out there. Because I also think there's parts of your performance that are very like visceral and like deep and like, oh my, like, you know, this person's going through something in front of me right now. It's like a modern performative like musical dance of sorts. And you might not always want that to be like, oh, beep, like you might not want the whimsy in it. So I could see that conflict.
Exactly. The word beep is what is bothering me. I guess the sort of bruising part of it, as I said, bruiser, referring to the fact that I bruise easily. And as you were saying, you know, this person's going through something right in front of me and like bruises forming right in front of me. And I do agree that the word beep sort of conjures this sort of whimsical thing that I'm not always fond of.
But like combined, it's like it's kind of like exactly it's like the yin and yang of what your performance is in some ways.
I actually didn't think of that until I said that sentence just now talking to you about it. I never thought of it that way. Yeah, like I said, I get annoyed sometimes with people perceiving me as too whimsical, but I try to calm myself down from being annoyed with it by I'm totally fine if people interpret what I do as whimsical at first, but if as the performance grows and as the set goes on and as they get to know the work itself more, they don't think that as much. That's what I want.
Well,
that's the goal.
I think that what you're dealing with, and I do want to get into this conversation of what exactly you personally define your art as, because it could be different things, but what you're doing is very outside the box, especially for Pittsburgh. And for the scene that you're in the shows that you're playing, a lot of people probably aren't used to seeing something like Bruiser Beep. And, you know, what do people do sometimes when they don't understand something? They kind of like laugh at it or laugh at it or laugh with it and just kind of process it in a different way. Like, I don't understand what's going on. And it might take them time to understand it, digest it, especially if there's somebody that's not used to, I guess, just in a very general blanket of what you do, like experimental performance art. So what do you classify it as? I know that's like a terrible question. I can't even answer it, but like, you know, like what do you want people to get out of it who haven't seen you before?
I think that the word experimental is absolutely appropriate. Avant-garde performance art, all of those words are appropriate. And I've had a range of descriptions, you know, when you have the event page come up for a show and whoever's booking me or whoever, they come up with their own, or sometimes they ask. And if they ask, I usually do say just, you know, something along the lines of experimental, avant-garde, something like that. But I've had a range of different ways people have interpreted it. I like a recent one was deconstructed pop music. And I liked that one. I like to use words like theater and performance art, like I said. I think those are all fine descriptor terms for it. As far as how people, like you said, interpret it at, say, a DIY show, or when I'm playing for a bunch of college kids who've never seen experimental music or experimental performance art, especially. It is a mixed reaction, and I like it and I don't. Sometimes I get sort of discouraged because sometimes they really are laughing at me, and because they don't understand, just because they're not used to seeing something at, you know, a basement show or any DIY show, something like that.
Yeah. And
I do play a mix of shows where I fit very appropriately on the bill, and there's lots of other similar things to what I do, and I fit in well. And then when I play DIY shows, like in a basement or something, and there's college kids, I totally stand out. And I think that's an honor that I get to do that. I come from a small town, not, you know, I moved to Pittsburgh a year and a half ago, and when I started booking shows, there was a big gap in that happening for a while. And the kids that were coming to my show were high school kids, not even college kids. And they had never been to shows, period. So I thought that was an honor, and it's an honor to give that gift to people who have never experienced it. So I think of, playing crowds that are not used to seeing something like I do also as an honor. And I am glad that I can give that to them. And whether or not they are laughing at me or with me, it's fine. And I like that humor is a part of it. Like I said, I try to build my sets in a way that I sort of start out with the whimsical, funny, humorous introduction and build it into something that's a little darker. And if I scare them,
you drag everybody into the darkness.
Yeah.
You're like Pennywise the clown.
That's great.
Here's the red balloon.
I haven't got
Come on down.
Oh my goodness.
So I had a really interesting thought about experimental music when we were talking about it. And I never thought about this before. Have you ever thought about the likely fact that at one point in time, every genre of music was experimental?
I guess I've thought about it not in those words exactly, but just when you're listening to bands that are even just 20 years old or, going farther and farther back into time, that was new at one point. I guess I never have thought of it, at one point this was an experiment. And I feel like no matter what you're doing, whether I definitely am in a classification of experimental, out of the box performance art and music.
Like experimental the genre.
Yeah, but I feel like everything should be an experiment.
That's what I was just going to say.
If you're, playing something that is very something that anyone could hear anywhere and they'd be like, oh yes, I accept this. That you should go into the process of making that as an experiment. Otherwise you're just doing something. You're not, investigating what you're trying to make in an experiment.
The way that I've thought about this recently, because I've had thoughts like this over the past few months, but I haven't really quite described it in the way we are right now. But I've been thinking about music as a conversation between you and strangers.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that keeps conversation going is like interesting topics, new ideas. What are you bringing to the table? And say me and you are having a conversation and somebody walks in our conversation and starts just repeating every single word that I'm saying word for word. It's like, you have no value in this conversation. You're just copying what I said.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how a lot of art can be. Not saying there isn't value in that, but at the same time, it's like, why would you want to do that? If you're not going to bring your own ideas to the table and not contribute to the conversation of art or music.
You're paying to come to the show. You want to have the best experience. I think of it that way too with dancing at shows and moving and however any individual wants to do that. I always feel when I see people seeming really scared to move, and I totally understand. Sometimes you're just not in the mood, but you want to listen anyway, or sometimes you have physical limitations that you can't. But I'm frustrated when I feel too inhibited at a certain space to move around because I'm like, man, I paid. I want to be here to experience this and have that conversation between this music that I maybe have never heard before.
Yeah, I always get real bummed out when I see like somebody, really getting into it at a show, even if it's like just one person, and then you see other people that have nothing else better to do but judge them.
Yeah.
It's like, fuck you. Like, I wish I was having as much fun as that motherfucker over there. Like, they're having the time.
You're not getting your money.
You're just here being grumpy. There's something about, like, I don't know if it came from like that.
Do you think that's more a thing in Pittsburgh? I have not toured yet.
I think it's everywhere. I don't think it's a Pittsburgh thing. I think it's just I think really what it boils down to is not people thinking that they're too cool. I think it's just more of a shy thing.
I think so too. I know I've definitely gone to shows where I have not felt comfortable enough to move as I would another time, and that's really frustrating when especially when I'm really into it and I have to be like secretly moving with my hands, but like down here or something.
But I mean, there's times too where sometimes you can be the conduit for change. You start moving around and maybe somebody else that was feeling kind of weird about it. And then it's like, even though like I have my feelings about like the corniness of mosh pits, like one person needs to get it started, and then everyone's like, "Oh, this is cool, let's do it."
And that's a conversation in itself as well. So
yeah, but, I mean, but in a way, you know, people do consider that dancing in their realm of existence.
Yeah, I think any type of dancing. I grabbed my character shoes from high school, like my theater shoes from my mom's house over Christmas, and I've been wearing them to shows because they're made to dance in, and they have a slight percussive element, not as much as a tap shoe would, but I love wearing them to shows, especially when it's a concrete floor too. That feels great to be able to dance, and I was always drawn to tap because I love that like percussive feeling in your feet when you dance too. I'm like a hand flailer too at shows.
Yeah.
So I used to be a mosher kinda, but then I got older. And
I feel like that's where I'm at now too, and I feel bad saying like moshing is corny.
No, I don't think it's corny. I love seeing it.
I do
I will
too.
hurt myself.
It's corny for me.
Yeah,
but
same.
like maybe that's just my cynical excuse to not get involved. But like, I mean, obviously I play in a metal band and I love when kids are moshing around, but sometimes some people can be really corny about it too. It really depends. Like, I feel like I had a moment last night, we were playing a show and there was one person moshing that was, so how like tuned into like fighting video games are you? Are you familiar with like Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat, any of that stuff?
A little bit. I did not grow. I never had a video game console growing up. I'm really not. Well, I like the soundtracks.
Well, okay. Well, maybe then you can relate or understand. Like for somebody that doesn't typically play video games, if they play like a fighting game, people will call them button mashers because they get the controller and they're just like. Ugh. I feel like there's some people that don't normally go to shows and they get into the mosh pit and they're the button masher of the mosh pit. Like they go way too hard and like, you know, they take it. They're like, they think that's like, and they're always way too extreme. And everybody's like, whoa, calm down. Because there is sort of like this really meticulous nuance to being in the mosh pit. Like having like understanding like where the line is and how to respect and the camaraderie. And then there's always that one idiot that like ruins it too. Everybody's like, whoa, chill out. I mean, we had one of those last night. And I was like, okay, like that's the corny dude. But it only takes one.
Yeah.
So
God bless
I don't think
corny
moshing's
dude.
corny. I just think some people, you know, but at the same time, they don't normally go out to a show and they're having fun. Supposedly they're just,
as long as
they're oblivious to the fact that they're kind of making everybody else uncomfortable. So
I you know, like we were saying, I think that you know, the nuance to it and, you know, kind of understanding when it's supposed to happen, when it's not supposed to happen. But if you know, corny dude wants to have a ball, go for it.
Yeah, I think that it's just really important, no matter what position you're in, whether you're a performer or an attendee, just be mindful of the people around you and understand that every action that you have is going to have a reaction on everything else. If you're moshing too crazy, you're going to make everybody feel uncomfortable.
I've had to really learn how to read people's body language as a performer as I've incorporated more. I wouldn't say I don't touch people, but sort of audience interaction. And I've learned that the rule of thumb that I use is that there will always be people that are giving off receptive body language. I like to honk bike horns in people's faces in one song and like throw oatmeal at people and things of that nature. And I have not witnessed this one. It's really fun, but I've also realized that you can't throw oatmeal or honk a bike horn at somebody who's like, you know, like you have to throw the oatmeal and honk the bike horn at somebody who's engaging with you, who's making eye contact with you. And if people are close enough to you that you can see that and you can see that they're being receptive and they're into it, they're not still like, you know, processing it like, what the fuck am I witnessing right now? You want to do that to someone who's really engaged with you, and they will love that usually. So that's what I don't, like I said, touch people. I wouldn't want to do that. But as far as, you know, I honking a bike horn in someone's face is also, it can be kind of abrasive, I suppose. Sure. So I think that as a performer, you have to keep that in mind. And I like that that about performing for smaller audiences, because growing up doing theater, I always have this memory of I can't see the audience at all because the lights are blinding me. I only hear them and feel them. I don't see anyone.
Yeah.
I used to make my mom hide though at all my performances. I didn't let my boyfriend, who also plays music, come to any of my shows for like the first like 5 months we were together. I've always been really weird about people that I'm closest to watching me. Like I said, when I started doing theater and performing when I was 4 or 5, and I would, for smaller performances where I could see the audience, I would tell my mom that she had to like hide in the back so I couldn't see her. But,
I could see that. I've had the same issue with like people that I really, really know that come out to see me play. It can be kind of weird sometimes. Not so much with Greywalker, but with what we're doing with Sikes and the New Violence now, because I've gotten way more theatrical and like
it's a weird
events.
type of intimacy that you're sharing with someone that is close to you that has not seen you do that before. It's really something to get used to.
And when I first started dating the Stacy who I'm with now, we've been together for about 3 years, but when we first started dating, I had a bunch of songs about just like, past relationships and like weird things. And like, I don't think, she really had ever been in a relationship with somebody that, kind of created music and like, things around that sort of thing. Like, oh, I'm writing songs, and you're going to hear me talking about past relationships if you come out to my shows.
Yeah, that's a totally new level of intimacy in a weird universe. That
and just having her in the room, it makes my relationship with that material weird. And like, I take when I'm performing something pretty seriously, and I feel like sometimes it's hard for me to perform it the way that I need to with somebody like her in the space, or other people that might be aware of what the material is about. It can be very like, it takes me out of where I think I need to be. But if I'm in a room full of strangers, and there are people that don't know who I am, like that's when I'm like the biggest freak in the world, is when I'm completely surrounded by
material takes on a different life after so long. I found that songs that I wrote a while ago, 3 months, they mean something totally different to me. So but also I've only dated musicians, but I've never written a love song either or anything like I never write about relationships or anything like that. I feel
you're probably better off.
Yeah, it's a safe territory to be in, I suppose, in that sense. I feel all my songs are very specific, and it is like a musical, I think, in the sense that they're lyrically really specific, but also sort of allegorical and sort of avant-garde in a lyrical sense. And so I feel very strongly like I know what the fuck I'm referring to when I'm saying this, but someone else may or may not. And but other songs I feel like are extremely specific, but those songs tend to be character pieces. So it's I think, again, making it very much like a musical.
So with me and doing hip hop, the thing that I've always wanted to write from the perspective of being able to connect with other people, other just normal human beings. But as a normal human being, I don't connect well with other people just because of like the way that I work and how I do things. So I've found the thing that I usually connect the most with normal people is just relationship stuff. So I've found myself writing songs about like relationship things, not commonly, but like anytime I put out an album, there's usually one. But like it's like, because for some reason every album cycle has dealt with awkward relationship things. So I've found that that's always been an easy way for me to connect with other people. But like I always tell myself like I'm never gonna write another one of these, and hopefully I don't have to, because I feel like I'm in a healthy situation now. But hey, who knows?
Relationship song
can write a healthy relationship song. But I have a pet peeve against like songs where everything's going well.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean?
That's boring.
No, I don't. I like when things are going well.
Yeah.
But like, who wants to watch like a movie where everything's perfect?
Certainly. That's boring as fuck.
That's like this is like
That's literally not
this is
the
like
definition
this is like suburbanite
of a story.
porn.
Yeah,
You know?
it's not. It's boring as shit.
Yeah,
No one wants
you
that.
need drama to like really drama with like some sort of a positive resolve to really.
Isn't that funny too that we're saying that we wouldn't want to consume any media or art like that, but we're like, but we want our lives to be like that.
Well, I
we
think
don't. But
because it's just
people
not.
always say, you have to have contrast and light and dark in your life, but you never literally think that you want that because you just don't want bad things to happen. But of course, you don't want to consume media that's like that.
I don't feel like I'm a very like spiritual person, but really lately I've been really in like how yin and yang, just that very simple concept, like it's much more than a bad tattoo. There's a lot of there's a lot of good thought around that concept. And I think, nothing is all light, nothing is all dark. I think everything honest has a little bit of both. Whether some people want to admit that or not. And I think in art, whether it's a piece of a movie or a song or a painting, I want to be able to see the light and dark in it for me to be able to relate to it. Because that's how I know it's honest.
Yeah, absolutely.
If there's something that's all perfect, that's not honest. And if there's something that's all negative, I also know that's not honest.
Mm-hmm. You'd mentioned sort of at the beginning of it, we're both like, we're both that type where we're all over the place, but that's good. That's why we're doing a podcast.
Yeah,
because we're both talkative. Where was that thought go? Exactly. Yeah, we got too far off. Oh, about relating to people and writing lyrical content that resonates with other people. I don't know if I tried to do that. I feel I have tried to do that and I didn't like it. I just didn't feel like something I want to do.
I feel like in your position and the way you perform and everything, there's part of me that like, and I mean this in a good way, like I don't want to relate with you. Like I want you to just do what you're doing and me to take it in and interpret it.
Yeah.
But being like in a hip hop perspective, that's kind of the thing where you want to connect in a different way totally different with the audience versus what you're doing.
Yeah. I actually had that thought occur to me recently, like as you were saying, talking about experimental performance as a genre versus something like hip hop, where you are, aiming to write lyrics and produce music that resonates with people. And it is specific to things that a lot of people can relate to, but also has, emotional nuances to it. I feel like experimental performance art tends to be, again, the genre thing. It's a lot of characters, and as you said, it's just you don't want to necessarily relate to it. There's a lot of sort of insinuating aliens and clowns is a big one. I feel like it's a really popular one with women in experimental performance art, is like everybody's clowns, which clowns are great. You said Pennywise earlier. Like clowns are good because I think that they have that element. They have that yin and yang. And dark. Yeah. The yin and yang clowns, definitely. Clowns are popular. Anything sort of alien or space monster. There's a lot of different things. I feel like that's probably what you're referring to. That sort of, you don't necessarily want to relate to it like you would a song that you would as performing hip hop music. It's something that you just take and interpret.
There are people that do characters in hip hop, and I'm sure there's people that do what you're doing that's very relatable. I think it's just a matter of what you want to do.
Yeah.
There's no fucking rules. So it's just a matter of, this is what feels right to me. This is how I feel happiest with my work. This is what I'm fucking doing.
Yeah, exactly. Again, relating to approaching what you do, everything is an experiment. I feel like if you're not going into it again, and you have a question for yourself, like, what do I want? What am I trying to figure out? If you're not trying to do that with something besides, I want to be famous, I want to be rich, because you will probably not do those things. And but it's weird though, because I feel like, and this is not related to what I just said, the sort of cognitive dissonance that is with people that are still not really the same as rock star mentality, but this is a thing that I notice a lot of true definition outsider artists have this idea that they either already are really, really famous or they're going to be famous. And it's sort of this thing where you don't quite know if it's for real, and you never really do. And I like that. I like that they're, again, I talked about the beginning of this creating some sort of obscurity with who I am, but I like when I don't know when an artist is just so in the realm of what they're creating and just they're completely their art and nothing else. Like, I feel like at least in a Pittsburgh sense, some people know kind of who I am, and I have some parts of me remaining that are human, and I love like the mystique of, does this person not know that they're famous, or does this person not know what's really going on? And I feel like that's what there's other things that I have this theory that I've sort of mapped out about what I define as an outsider artist, but I feel like that's the defining thing that separates them from someone who's just experimental or something. Is this sort of, you really don't know if they know. They don't know if they're experimental or not. Other people are interpreting it that way, but maybe they don't know.
Sure. I think that goes back to being genuine. And when it comes to watching live music, I'm happy to see any style of performance as long as what I'm seeing is genuine.
Me too. Yeah.
And there are a lot of people that go out of their way to be like, I'm an experimental artist that I have seen, and I'm like, this just isn't genuine. Like, this is this is nonsense.
You see a lot of that. Like I said, because along with playing like DIY shows where I'm kind of introducing people to what that sort of a taste of what that is. I play a lot of shows where I fit appropriately on, and it is all experimental stuff, and I don't really feel like I can think of too many people around here. I really feel like the experimental community around here is really fantastic, and everybody's really genuine, and everyone's just, the experimental community in Pittsburgh, it's just music nerds. Like, everyone's just really, really fucking nerdy, I love that.
I could say this. Anytime I've seen a performance from somebody that wasn't very genuine, I mean, they don't stick around.
Yeah.
They play a couple shows and then they disappear.
I feel like
onto some other thing.
I see videos online of things and hear recordings, and it's not just experimental. It's
any genre.
It can be anything.
Anything.
You can tell so easily. You can just tell so easily. But
there's also that fine line between it not being genuine or it is genuine, but you could tell they're just figuring it out. And I'm okay with that.
Oh, yeah.
Like, if I see somebody like really bomb a set because like they don't know what they're doing, but you could tell that there's a passion. It's like, you know what? Cool. Like, I think that stick with it. You're going to figure it out. Like,
I don't want to. That was me all last summer. I had a ton of shows last summer, and I bombed a couple of them. I can honestly say I did.
I think that there's,
and I was trying a lot of new things, and I was trying to, I for some reason I had it in my head that I should write an entirely new set every single show I played. And I had 6 shows between June and July, and I did that. And I look back, I'm like, why did I think that was an experiment in itself? But I'm glad I did that, because I did force myself to figure a lot of things out that now I'm more confident with, but it was awkward as fuck doing it in front of people.
I feel like it's like stand-up comedy in a way, where you just have to you have to do the sets. You don't know the material, but the only way to really test what you're doing is to do it in front of audiences.
I don't know how
it's not
comics do it. And I think about the hardest type of performance. I'm like, that would be terrifying because of what you were just.
The only way to be good at it is to be completely transparent and vulnerable with strangers.
Yeah,
and with your art, you talk about how you could be a character and do this sort of thing, but with stand up, it's some people do stand up as characters.
Yeah.
But the most, when you think of who
if
would
I
be
should
the most,
try to do it, I'd have to do it that way, because I would not, I feel like I would, and I think some comics do come off this way, just be like, here's this life tragedy that I'm making a joke at the expense of this one. Like that would be terrifying. And to see if people are going to think it's funny, or I feel when you watch music, people will clap no matter what. If it's complete bullshit, people will clap, but stand-up comics, they won't laugh. Like I've been to so many things where people just straight up don't laugh like they would clap for a musician.
Yeah.
So that would be really, really awkward.
I think
and terrifying.
I mean, I don't know much about it, but I think that the key, from what I understand in terms of the comedy that I like, it's just people that are human. And like just unafraid to just be a human and just connect and like have their door open and just be able to, you know, share with you things. And for some reason they also have this superpower to be able to take like the things in your head and pull them out and articulate them in a way that you would never be like clever enough to think of.
Yeah.
And you're like, yeah, I get that.
I mentioned before feeling, we were talking about, you know, being authentic and being genuine in what you make, and with talking about, you know, pulling stuff that's from the depths of you and just presenting it to complete strangers and just being a human. And I mentioned earlier about feeling like there are still parts of me that remain human. I feel like this is, wow, just pulling from all these different things we touched on earlier. You mentioned characters being sort of a way that being shy and introverted is manifested. I feel like I have masked a lot of parts of who I really am inside of me, and as a human, as the human that is me inside of myself, which I guess is not a human. This is the human. Humans, both of it. It's
sure.
But I feel like I've had to mask a lot of it, and so to just appear acceptable, socially acceptable for people. And I've done that my whole life. I've just always been like a freak, I guess. And I'd never liked standing out like that. And so I feel like performing like that is a good way to feel like, okay, this is acceptable, that I can do this right now. Cause yeah, I don't, for being, you know, an experimental performance artist, I don't like standing out too much. I feel, again, I like it when I'm not worried about what anyone else thinks. I like just being who I am and just living my life how I want to. But when I become aware that it's not the norm, then I don't like it. Yeah,
for me, no, I've gone through all different sorts of phases of the ways that I react with the audience and what I expect from them. Mm-hmm. Now it's like, if there's somebody that isn't gonna understand or like what I'm doing, I'm like, okay, well, that's fine. The best thing I could do is just do a good show. Mm-hmm. And if they still don't like it, they're not gonna like it. That's okay. It's fine. It's like, if they don't get it, they don't get it. I don't dwell too much on it before, where there was definitely times in my life where, you know, there could be 30 people in a room and I'm focused on making that one grumpy person like it, mm-hmm. versus like entertaining, like to the detriment of the performance, when there's you know, everybody else is like digging it and I'm like, why doesn't that one person like it? But I think that's just a human thing.
Oh yeah, I've been there too. I think that's natural for performers, and you won't get very far trying to do that.
No,
but yeah,
but you don't know until it happens and then you realize it. Like, there's no guidebook, there's no directions. You just gotta get out there and start doing it and figure out what works and what mm-hmm. doesn't, and the growing pains of being a performer and figuring out your sets and trying all those different things. With last year, the tail end of last year, I started trying out all this new stuff with the Sikes set, doing all these like theatrical things and mm-hmm. figuring out what works, what doesn't. Like, oh, this is way too fucking much, like this isn't enough. Like, it's a whole different thing. Like,
yeah,
I write rap songs. I'm not a fucking like a theater stage play organizer, but I'm like, this is the only, I'm so interested in doing this, I'm just gonna fucking do it.
So that's,
but it's
the
like
only
back
way
to square one.
What will work. Yeah. Oh yeah, and it like I said last summer, doing that thing. I don't know why, again, why I thought that was a good idea, but in the end, it was a good idea. It was just very awkward and vulnerable to grow and try new things and fuck it up in front of people multiple times.
Yeah.
And I figured out now, and this is something I've kind of been chewing on the past week or so. I think it is better to sort of just rehash and remix, just redo solid ideas and sort of experiment from the ground up, at least where I'm at right now, than to just try to shit out a bunch of new material. And I realized that I have a large catalog of material that I've never played yet even, and I will still be like, I don't have a new song for this set, so I'm a failure. And I will get in that mindset, but I'm like, what am I talking about? I have all this stuff, and I even have the songs that I'm so comfortable that I could, perform this underwater and be fine, and I could just do something a little new with it, and that would be exciting for me. And I would still, I think I get worried that I will bore anyone who has seen me before.
Yeah.
Because I think that while I have those shows where I am introducing people to a taste of what sort of avant-garde is, I have, like I said, the experimental crowd of Pittsburgh folks, while it is a really sweet and loving, supportive community of nerds, it's small. So I feel like people see me do things repeatedly, and I get worried about it.
I would say anybody that's willing to watch anybody perform multiple times, they're expecting to see different things.
Mm-hmm.
But also they're expecting to see the same things that they've seen, just done differently, different nuances. It's like back to stand-up comedy.
Yeah.
Listening to a comedian tell the same bit, but at a different show.
Mm-hmm.
There's different nuances in the cadence and the beat and the way they're telling it.
Yeah.
And that could be interesting watching somebody play a song, or watching somebody like you that's so like physically performative on top of the music. It's never going to be exactly the same, no matter what. There's always going to be those differences.
And I get so excited when I watch my friends who I've seen. I know the words to all their songs, but then something's a little different. I'm like, oh, fuck yeah. Like, I'm so excited for them.
Yeah.
And so I don't know why.
You're able to connect with it because you're familiar with the material,
mm-hmm.
but you're also able to watch something that you care about grow
mm-hmm.
and become
that's so exciting.
A bigger, stronger thing. So you shouldn't worry about this thing that I think every artist, especially musicians, thinks about, where like you forget how intimately close to the work you are, because like stuff that you're working on, ideas for songs that are going on in your head all day, like, you've heard your song a million times. Even people that have seen you a dozen times have only heard that song a dozen times compared to the millions of times it's played in your head.
Oh yeah, I definitely trick myself into thinking that anyone who has seen me perform twice knows the song as well as I do. But I also think that's good to put that bit of pressure on yourself to push yourself to change things and to grow, even if you are working with a solid set that you've had for a while, but it's really solid and you know it well, but you're changing things bit by bit. I think that is good if you put that pressure on yourself. I've learned that you, at least for me, I have to find a really good balance between too much pressure and not enough pressure. And I think that's why I was drawn to sort of DIY underground music, is because initially I felt I was coming out of theater world and opera world and classical training, and I had been told by professors and teachers that I was not competitive enough and that I was not going to be able to handle the pressure of music school and being a vocal student, because I didn't like competing. I really didn't like it. And that didn't really happen until I got into high school. When I was younger, I was a good competitor and I was good at auditions and good at nailing things, but I started to just put too much pressure on myself. And that's why I started to really hate competition. And so coming out of high school and, dropping out of music school and being drawn to writing my own music and performing in, DIY underground communities. That's why I was drawn to it, because I was like, oh my God, it's totally non-competitive. But then I learned that it is just as competitive.
It's competitive in its own way.
Yeah, it's competitive in a different way, but I'd say it's about just as competitive. Like, coming from having experience in both worlds, I think that DIY communities don't talk about it as much, whereas music school kids will just straight up, it's more brought forth. But I think that there are certain things that are more relaxed and a more relaxed approach to the sense of community, in the sense of, you are competing with your peers and you have musical peers. It's a different approach to it, and I still love that about like communities of DIY underground music. I like that it's a good balance, and I think it takes time to figure out like, oh, it's not completely non-competitive. It's not just this totally mushy thing, but it's not super fierce either.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's competitive in a sense of encouraging, or just saying like, hey, like, we have our shit together. We're working on all this new material. We did all this cool stuff, like, check us out. And if you're playing shows with those people, it's like, fuck, like, I gotta,
yeah,
you feel like you want to be able to play ball with your peers. And it's not necessarily, most of the time there are occasions of some bands that are very good at being like, kind of like middle fingery without being that way. But for the most part, there's sometimes there are just people that really working their asses off, and you see it, and it makes you feel like, fuck, I'm not doing it.
And again, I think that's something that you can tell really easily. I think you can tell the difference between them and the, like, we have our shit together, we're confident. And I like seeing that. And I like when it is really good and they believe it and they know it. And I like that. And I do think that is a good sort of fire that's lit under people's asses when that happens, and in a good way, and not in a way that it feels like, oh, I have to, I seek revenge against this person who's better than me. It's not, it doesn't feel like that. It feels like inspiration. And that's what's different, I think, than sort of like really fierce competition that's not welcoming and not a community sort of thing.
It's really important to be able to realize that and understand it, because I think there are some people that unfortunately don't get it, and they don't know how to process those feelings internally, and it like really hinders them as performers. There's like this like weird like thick skin that you have to develop even if you don't want to.
Yeah, you have to have thick skin, but also you have to be receptive to the community, the sort of the love and support that comes with that too. Otherwise, you're not going to go very far either way if you don't have both.
You got to be able to like take punches from yourself, if that makes sense, because nobody's going to like kick you when you're down harder than yourself.
Yeah,
and I think you got to learn how to like fight back.
Yeah, I also like realizing that a lot of that sort of fierce competition, sort of stuff that I was describing, coming from like a really rigorous, theater, classical opera training background. I was a child, and I think that I didn't process those type of emotions like you were describing well, and neither did the other children that I knew. So I hope that, all of anyone who has come from that sort of community, and I know people who are in the community too here in Pittsburgh that came from similar backgrounds that I did, that you grow up and you learn that there's emotional parts to being in a music community and to being a creator.
Being
you have
a fucking person.
You and there's just things you have to learn, and like you said, that thick skin versus being able to take things in.
Yeah, I think there's a thing where, and I'm not saying that we should like beat kids up, but I think that we're too nice to kids, and I think that there's just this transparency that could be very beneficial. Are you
referring to like performing kids in general, or just all children?
All kids in general? Because I think that you don't come out of the womb a creator. I mean, some people might argue that I do, like, ugh. But I'm just saying, like, I think that whenever you're getting into performing in schools like that, I think a lot of your character is defined by just what you were able to absorb outside of before getting into creating art, doing theater, music, and things like that.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Just how you're shaped.
My teachers kicked my butt.
Just
you know?
like the basics of like, you know, being just a functioning human. But, you know.
Kids need something like that. If it's not, you know, music, it's sports. Kids do sports, right? That's the thing. People do sports or the academics. Kids do. I agree that if it's not, you know, I don't think a child can really understand it without some sort of structure like that as well. I hate to be like kids don't understand things, like but I feel
eventually figure things. You figure things out.
I was a child once and I figured.
But I think that kids are a lot smarter than people like care to think.
Oh yeah.
Like, you know, like I know like kids that are, you know, 1/8 my age that can smoke me at like very technical video games. Like they can think and process and understand things.
Yeah.
And I think
like,
it's
the emotional stuff that it takes time to process that stuff. And like you said,
if you get it's the thing is like sometimes I feel as though some parents don't even try. Like they avoid the emotional stuff and like down the line that can create some sort of problem. But I think like getting an early start on those sort of things might help. But I'm not a fucking child psychologist. I don't know.
I have a song about this actually that it's one of my favorites to perform. That's just about I went through a phase where I was convinced that I must have not been held enough as an infant, and so I started doing, because I'm like, I have all these problems that must be because I was not held enough as a baby. And so I did all this research and you know, watched all this stuff, read all this information about the effects of infants and newborns who are not given proper affection, and it affects their emotional and behavioral wellness as adults and even as older children. And I perform that song a lot, and there's how it concludes is saying that, you know, if no one is holding the babies, then they're going to hate computers. And I kind of just think of it like, I think I was going through a time where I was really frustrated with how to communicate on the internet and how to communicate in real life, and how they're different and how you can't treat them the same, and how I was trying to come to terms with that I'm not a normal communicator and that I have to try really hard, like I'm trying right now, to focus and to communicate. And even then still feeling like I'm masking things. So I think that's why I concluded the song in that way. But yeah, I think that you know, kids need that emotional, maybe not toughness is not a good word, but sort of guidance, I guess, because that is
guidance. That's a great word.
The structure and the whipping into shape that something like music or sports or academics, whatever, is giving a kid a sense of purpose in life. Because that's, you know, I think it's just emotional well-being. You need a sense of purpose.
Well, I think just from my personal story, it would have been really cool to have like some stronger like role models in my family and people that would be willing to talk about things and like explain to me what was going on. And I had that in my grandmother, but like with other people in my family, there was a lot of just not good things. And like she would explain it in the best way that she could, and it really helped me out a lot. And it ended up helped me like understand like what addiction is, and like things that like most like 8-year-olds shouldn't understand. Like I got it, and I developed like a sense of empathy for it. And it also kept me like, whenever I start like 13, 14, I have friends that are getting into drugs and shit like that. I was like, no way. Because I understand what happened as a result of my family, thanks to my grandmother just being very like, this is what's happening.
Yeah.
And I think there are some times where people don't have those, they don't have that opportunity to have that conversation, and it can really affect people because they're not ever like told what is really going on around them. It's kind of like masked.
Yeah.
So I'm not talking to me, and that's a completely different conversation than art. But I just think in general, just being very transparent with people and understanding why the world is the way around them and why people do things the way they do, whether and like why you feel the way you feel about certain things. Just being able to understand that at a young age. Like, I think kids can process stuff way more than we give them credit for.
Yeah.
So it helps to put that out there, because I don't know, it helped for me.
Yeah.
Who the fuck knows where I would be if it wasn't for those conversations?
Yeah, that guidance through conversation, that sort of, just giving kids a direction to go in with that. Because you're right, something as heavy as addiction, a child is not, unless, given some sort of, direction as to like, this is what's going on, and like, this is why it's not good, and this is how we deal with it from here. A kid's not going to just know that coming out the womb. So it's and I think that any instincts, and this really goes for adults too, I think that instinct is right and wrong sometimes. I don't know, I had a thought about this earlier, something about, I think I said something to Johnny about like your guts know first, because your guts are attached to your brain because of the spine. And I was making a joke, but also we were saying something about having a bad feeling about a situation. We're like, yeah, we knew that right off the bat that this was like a weird thing, and it ended up being a weird thing. So I guess I think kids are born with instincts like that I think that for a kid to question, okay, something's amiss here, that's instinctual, to sense that animals know that too,
kids question some really funny stuff. Like they some really outside the box shit, stuff that you don't think they should know about, and sometimes the people that are responsible for those kids will sidestep the question. Where if a kid asks about something, I think that you should just fucking tell them what it is. Otherwise, you might create like a false sense of like shame around something, or a false sense of like fear around something that they don't need, and that could
around the specific situation, and just around questioning things in general, which is not something that anyone should have a fear of.
The smartest people have probably asked the most questions.
Yeah.
Because nobody knows anything, really. I mean, you have ideas of things, but you're always learning.
Yeah.
You should be. If you're not, I feel like you're maybe not making the best use of your time on this planet.
Yeah.
But that's just my opinion.
I think that, wow, we're talking about kids and stuff.
Oh, my brain goes all over the fucking place.
I don't have kids.
Well, we were all kids.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We both were children. As I said earlier, I was a child once. I know it. And sort of, relating back to music stuff, which is, I guess, why we're here. I think that again, approaching things with that sort of instinct and questioning things is another just great way to. People talk about. That's another thing I've got before as a interpretation is childlike. I think I've got that with my visual art a lot more.
Sure.
Like the word childlike, which I don't mind that for some reason as much as whimsical. Whimsical still will irritate me more.
There's something about that word that's irritating, but what's kind of cool about art from kids, and I was actually just having this thought, I really like looking at like a drawing that a kid did, because there is a million times more imagination in it, and you can see them just trying to figure things out versus somebody that like knows what they're doing and it's all refined. That kind of happens with music too.
Yeah,
like a lot of time.
I think anything, saying something is childlike is a good compliment. I think that, at least I think so. Maybe someone else wouldn't feel like that. But I think
it's like explorative, it's imaginative, it's just trying to figure out the world around you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that it can relate to things being sort of minimal and simplistic, but I don't think it always needs to be. I love that in music and in visual art. The childlike sort of sensations that you can get from things. I think that you're a millennial, right?
I guess so.
Yeah, I think we have a really. I am too. We have that. We really love nostalgia and childlike things and things that remind us of our childhoods, because the world is really awful for us, where the world is really fucked up, and I think that's why we love nostalgic and childlike things. And I I think that more and more I see it, and I'm not talking about, my art in particular, a lot of art and music, just any media is being created by millennials that is reflective of that, this sort of childlike qualities to things in various ways that it's manifesting.
I also think a big part of the reason why like our generation is so nostalgic is because we're living in one of the first times where like old media and old things can really be archived and like stored for us to actually go back and look at it.
And we had a little taste of everything.
It's not all this like shitty videos or like poor quality photos.
Yeah.
It's like everything is so archived now that like it's really easey for us to not let go of it.
Oh yeah, we can access things that are archived so easily, but we also like. I love when I will go into a record store and an old guy's like, I bet you never even seen a record before. It's like,
that's
I'm 20. Yeah, I'm 25, sir. I've seen a record before. My dad was literally a DJ.
Yeah.
Like, I've seen records before. but yeah, like older people. But we really are. We're a generation where there were still records. There were CDs. There were like cassette tapes. We saw like iPods, and we saw digital archiving really be prominent for the first time. And so we have this sort of really broad perspective of it. And I think that that's why our generation can, watch, obscure moments of Rugrats on YouTube at 3 a.m. because we can, and because we don't have to dig out a broken VHS and like pound on the SpongeBob TV with the built-in VHS player to access that.
In a completely like more related to music conversation, I think that's a big part of the reason why new creators have a really hard time getting out there, getting their work seen, because
I was hoping we'd be able to talk about this.
Not only are we dealing with, just it's so easy to make art, distribute it, get it out there, but you also have a whole generation of people that are like, they're just gonna go on Netflix and watch reruns of Friends or whatever fucking shit they're watching. Like, they have so much old stuff. They don't really invest time in finding new art.
Yeah.
So they have this machine in their pocket that can let them watch, all the Ren and Stimpy that they want.
Yeah.
Or whatever. But
I think
what did you want to get into?
Oh, well, I think on the topic of, I guess what I was, when I said I was all giddy with excitement because I was hoping we'd be able to talk about this at some point, putting out music and releasing music right now in this where we're at with
digital
things.
Climate.
Yeah, it's weird. I feel especially weird about it. I feel like I do not have a good handle on it. I
think it really goes back to making art coming from an introverted place. And there is nothing more extroverted than social media.
Yeah.
And I have a really hard time being that version of myself.
Yeah.
Because like the most extroverted thing that I think I do that I feel comfortable with is stuff like this.
Yeah.
But this still isn't even like, this is just us having a human moment.
Yeah.
And we record it and then we put it out for the world. Mm-hmm. It's not like me being like constantly worried about updating my Instagram stories so I stay relevant in people's minds. Like, I don't give a fuck about that. Like, I don't know. I don't watch people's stories. I'll think about it every once in a while and I fuck with it, but like,
there's a weird pressure, I think, as as an underground artist who you have to be, when you're not, you don't have a PR person, you don't, you're not on a label, you don't have someone doing PR for you, you're doing your PR. There's this weird pressure to behave a certain way on social media and to remain relevant, like you said. And while I do love seeing updates that are, related to people's art and stuff, I don't have a good handle on it. I don't know how. I try again. I think I'm going through a point right now where I'm navigating that part. I'm navigating being my own PR, whereas last spring, summer, I was navigating what I was coming into with Bruiser Beep performance wise, because I like performing. I do like recording, and I've enjoyed recording with previous projects, but I don't have a good setup right now to record, so it's not enjoyable for me. I hope that it will be again someday, but right now it's just not. And it's just too much a hassle because I have like zero recording gear really. And like I said, I hope that someday recording will be a really enjoyable process for me again. But yeah, I feel like I'm navigating right now how to be a PR person and feel like I'm not being not who I am, but it's really hard to understand how things come off and nuances. It just person to person, just vocal nuances, how you're conversating with someone, 5 different people are going to have 5 different interpretations of what you meant with your inflection. So on social media where, your inflection is not as easily perceived, it's even more confusing, and I don't know how to do that yet. I'm currently experimenting with that, and how I basically all I'm trying to do, I just want to have something that's visually and sonically honest,
cohesive and honest.
No. I don't.
You don't want to be cohesive.
No. Fuck being cohesive. I thrive on incoherence. Really, I don't. No, really, Brian. I love it. I just feel like that it's too that pressure. Like I was talking about, it's just not who I am. I can't do it. I will freak. I can try. I can try really hard to be very demure and very professional, but I'm just not like that. I'm just too all over the place for that to really feel like who I am. So I know that as I said, I'm exploring what I'm comfortable with and what feels like being honest with who I am as my own PR person, and experimenting with it is fun because I get to make a lot of visual art and all I'm really doing is like when I'm practicing, I videotape myself and I just make more, visual accompaniment for, talking about I have a show this week. That's all I'm really doing with it right now.
Sounds good to me.
But as far as being cohesive, no, I don't want that. I try to stay away from it. Because if I start to put pressure on myself to do that and to feel like, oh, I need to be more professional, then I will have a meltdown and feel like I'll never be professional. Because I feel like anytime I've tried, it's just so fake. I'm just not like that.
I don't think anybody wants people to be professional on social media. And I think I think even the most professional people, like businesses, their social media is sharing memes.
Yeah.
It's not professional.
I guess I feel like with art stuff and music stuff, it's not professional in the sense that you would think of, H&R Block. But H&R Block shares memes too. I don't.
Yeah.
I guess it's
because it's human.
Yeah.
Just be yourself.
Yeah, I think the too much cohesiveness thing and the being this is going to sound silly, but the making complete sense and being really so that people know. I don't know. It just drives me. It makes me feel that's not how I am when I'm comfortable. Right now, I'm uncomfortable right now because I knew I was coming into this that I have to behave. I can't be too silly or anything. But when I'm comfortable, I talk in a really sort of stream of conscious kind of way, and how my songs are really, and that's not completely, of course. Although I do just sing a lot in day-to-day life, but yeah, I think that the sort of professionalism I'm referring to, as far as musicians and artists, it's not H&R Block sans memes, but it's something more cohesive than what I feel like is who I am, and therefore makes me go bonkers when I try to do it. I don't know how to put it into words.
Maybe like keeping up with a schedule and considering like social media some sort of a responsibility, and like making sure that I'm posting regularly and I'm doing things that are supposed to be done on social media. Like that's not what you like?
No, because even then I feel, I don't think for me that would be too much regiment, but I do feel like there are people that do it that way that are very authentic because I know them personally, and that when they do kind of have it in a schedule, but that works for what they're comfortable expressing socially, and it is social media. So I guess if that's what works for them to have a sort of schedule, a regiment, to be like, here's this song, here's this thing, that works. But I know that they're not, ingenuine about it, because I know people personally and they do it that way and that works for them, but that doesn't work for me personally.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, I mean, I think everything about your work, as far as I know, has like this kind of, there's like an underlining sense of like improv in a way, where like nothing ever seems to be necessarily set in stone. Everything's always going to be a little different. You're always growing, and you're not really sure if where you are today is where you're going to be tomorrow.
Yeah.
So I can understand that not wanting to be cohesive in terms of social media, because it really just aligns with your art. Like it's really like a representation of what your music is.
Yeah.
And if you're like always one person online, but then your music's all over the place, that's not going to match up.
This is another thought that I've been chewing on the past few days. I think especially last summer when I was doing a lot of public growing, I felt really ashamed, I guess, of being incohesive, and I thought that. And I thought, even looking back to past projects I've done, and then coming from where I come from as a performer and a musician as a child, and all the different ways that I was exposed to music, even really early on in life, and where I'm at now, I felt like, man, I've been a million different people, but I've always been who I am, and I think I've always approached music, like we were saying, as this experiment, even though it may not have always been as experimental in terms of a genre descriptor as it is currently. I like where I'm at, and I feel like this is like, okay, I'm finally on a path that really, really, really feels right.
Yeah.
But I've had to overcome sort of embarrassment about being all over the place, because like I said, I don't like standing out. I wish that I made more sense sometimes. I feel like even in this interview, I contradict myself, because I really do. I constantly change my mind about how I feel about it. But that really is, I guess, what the point of it is. And I've always approached it that way. But I have to tell myself that, no, that's good, because that means that I've grown a lot.
You're working on it.
Yeah, that I try to. Another thing I think that. I'm sorry. I'm like leaping to all these different things.
I'm gonna tell you something. I'm gonna be very honest with you about two things.
Okay.
One, you have no idea how many times something has come out of my mouth on this show, and immediately I've regretted it. And I have like zoned out to a point where I have somebody talking at me for minutes, and like I don't even hear them, because I'm just totally dwelling on the thought in my head.
It's hard. I feel it's dizzying.
Yeah.
To be in here knowing, to be aware that other people are going to hear this, and it's being recorded right now. People are going to see us, but hey, but also that I want to, try to be somewhat comfortable, and but I'm
so
also
funny, but like
I'm like trying to listen to you, and I'm like,
I'm simultaneously. I mean, you mentioned before that like you don't feel 100% comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
This is honestly one of the more comfortable conversations I've had, because I feel like the way I can already tell the way your brain operates is so similar to me.
Aww.
That like we're just juggling stuff and it feels natural. Like that's how I would normally have a conversation.
Hell yeah. That's
so
great. I love talking to people. That's always wonderful when I feel similarly. I feel, like I said, I'm truthfully, I'm uncomfortable, but not because of anything you're doing. It's because of I'm aware that this is being recorded. I'm uncomfortable for everyone else who is listening right now, and you are hearing me because you're listening, but it's not Brian, it's you. But I like when you talk to somebody and you feel like your brain is operating on a similar level, and so it's easy to make conversation about whatever, and I feel like if that's happening, that those wavelengths are aligning, then you can talk about literally anything, and that will happen, and that's great.
Yeah, I just think there's something with like being like a solo artist that is always trying to think like, what can I do to keep pushing, be outside the box, and as soon as I achieve something that I think is cool, I'm like, well, I gotta scrap that. Let's move on to the next phase and do something even weirder or crazier or something like whatever I consider to be like the best version of myself. It's like, it's always, once I achieve the best version of myself, I'm like, eh.
Yeah, I think I would assume that most everyone playing music has at least, if they've not had, a like real live solo project, man. Like they at least have recorded something on their own. That's, you kind of have to start that way. But there's probably people who have never played anything by themselves ever. That's probably very minuscule amount of people. But I like I said, I've never been in a band that worked, and I really hope that one day I will find people that I vibe with musically, and it works really well, and we're all on those similar wavelengths again. But it won't be, I don't really think that I want to, at least right now, do what I make in Bruiser Beep and as a solo artist. And in the future, whatever I end up calling it, whatever it sounds like down the line, I always want to have a solo project. But you
want it to be different than working with other people.
Yeah, I would want it to be a totally different idea. If I'm in a band with other people, I don't want those worlds to collide, because I want this for myself. And as far as playing a show with a band to accompany me, that's cool. I would be open to that someday. I'm not ready for that yet. But yeah, if I were ever in a band, I would not want those worlds to, because this is the wavelength I'm on. This is the solo project that I'm using for like my own work, my own thoughts. And if I were in a band, I'd want it to be different ideas, because I have a lot of ideas, and other people do too. We all do. So,
yeah.
Like, make that happen in a totally different realm. I wouldn't want it to touch.
That makes complete sense. So, wrapping this up, you have some stuff online that people can see. I know there's some really awesome live video footage of you performing. I imagine there is other recordings and things like that. Where can people find some of these, digital artifacts of live performance and such?
There's very few. I again saying how I've tried to be my own PR person, kind of took some old things off that I wasn't happy with the recording and put some new stuff. Right now, my Bandcamp, which is just bruiserbeep.bandcamp.com, is just a hour-long set that was recorded recently when I was on advanced calculus.
Oh, cool!
And so it's a live set, but it's really similar to what I do.
Did Sean record that?
Yeah. It's
shout outs to Sean.
Yeah, Sean,
the only person that won't come on the show. Anytime I get a chance to bring that up, I do.
Oh, that's very funny. Yeah, that was just recently. That was just a few weeks ago, not even a month ago. So, yeah, Sean recorded that when I was on advanced calculus, and then Johnny and I did some just like a little bit of engineering on it. Then there's, I think, just a couple live videos that if you just Google or YouTube, is that what when you call it YouTubing, is it the same as Googling?
Sure.
If you look up Bruiser Beep, you'll find it. The one is from a couple years ago that was at Anna Zizzy's house, and then the more recent one that was in January is at Air on the north side.
Yeah, so I watched some clips from that one recently, and I was like, this is fucking crazy.
Oh, thanks.
I really, really like.
Yeah, when you saw me last, it was at Sick House.
Yeah, I did see you at Sick House.
I remember remember you were drawing fruit.
I was.
You were drawing fruit because Jackson had free oranges and bananas, and you made his sign.
Yeah, okay.
And I remember the whole house smelled of citrus because there was a lot of oranges, and everyone was eating oranges. It was great.
That's such a weird thing to remember. I'm glad you remembered that.
I literally have a visual memory. You were sitting in the corner, like not really talking to anybody, but you drew this really elaborate sign for the free fruit. And it was like, that's pretty great. That's good fruit.
Cool. So do you have any shows coming up in the next month or so? If you give me a moment, I can actually let you know when this is going to be available to the public. So
I do have stuff coming up. So
I should have done some research. April 8th is when this one will be out. So you have anything after April 8th?
Yeah. I have 2 shows this week, but then after April 8th, I know I have a show that's June 9th, which I don't know the venue yet. But I was just talking about another video that was me playing at Anna Zizzy's house. This will be for Anna's kickoff tour with Unicorns in the Snow, which is another really, really sick performance artist from the Midwest somewhere. And so playing that tour kickoff, and then in later April, I'm traveling to Baltimore because I am playing a True Vine Festival in Baltimore at Jason Willett from Half Japanese's record store, and I'm very stoked because Half Japanese is one of my favorite bands. And then I have more out of town shows this summer than I do Pittsburgh, which is exciting because, like I said, I have not toured. I don't have a driver's license, so if anyone was to help me get a driver's license so I can tour, but I have some not a solid chunk of tour, but just out of town shows. But I also have other shows in Pittsburgh this summer that I know that are happening.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'll if you do end up following me on social media, my Instagram is hello I'm 7D, and Bruiser Beep, YouTube and Bandcamp and such. I post when I have shows coming up. So if you find me, the shows will find you.
Cool. Thank you for coming over. This was a really fun, relatable, scattered conversation of good thought. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, me too.
And we gotta link up. We gotta do a show again.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we talked about this.
Actually, I don't know if we've ever officially played a show together.
No, like I said,
we've been around.
We've seen each other perform, but we've not shared a bill.
Yeah. So
I think that would make sense. And again, if people would not know how to process that, then oh well. Process. I think it would be fun. I think I would love to do a show of all locals that don't make sense with a lot of other bands, and I think that would be really fun to just do something in the summertime that's you're not. There's always going to be a bunch of touring bands that I have stuff that I have for touring bands this summer too, but as far as an all locals thing that's just for fun, and it is just all bands that don't fit neatly in on other bills typically in Pittsburgh.
Yeah,
that would be fun as shit. So I'd like to see that happen.
Cool. Let's work on it. That's it.
Cool. That was great. Great job. Great job.
You as well. Cool. And we're done. And that is all, folks. Thanks so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. It's really, really cool getting to sit down, chat with Dee. We get along really, really well. It was really awesome just chatting about everything we did. And if you're still here, you obviously had a good time too. I'll be back again next week with another episode. Same time, same place, same channel. You know the drill. My name is Sikes. Start the Beat 2019. Woo! Woo! Thanks for listening. Yeah.